In this video, I'm going to show you a Canva trick that has the potential to save you a ton of time. Now, this trick involves a text option feature that is kind of hidden, and most people don't even know it's there. And if they know it's there, they don't know that final trick that you can really use to make this a super useful tool. So what is this text option? Where do you find it? How do you use it? And then what's that additional trick to really take it to the next level and make it something that saves you tons of time? Well, we're going to go over all of that in this video. When you click on a text element in Canva, two things happen. One is you're going to see that blue bounding box around your text element. And the second thing is that you're going to see this contextual toolbar up top here with all the tools related to text. And this is going to show up regardless of whether you're working with a heading, a subheading, body elements. So you click on it, you get this blue bounding box, and then you get all the different options up here. Now, most people are familiar with most of these basic options here. You can change the font, you can change the font size, font coloring, you can come in here and add bold styling, italic styling, spacing options, some special effects here. So a lot of people know most of these options, but in my experience, most people do not know about the option I'm going to talk about today. And if they know about it, they don't understand how to use it. And if they understand how to use it, they don't know that final trick that's crucial for getting the most out of this option. So what is this option I'm talking about? Well, the option I'm talking about, you'll find hidden under this spacing menu. And under here you have letter spacing, line spacing, but then you also have this anchor text box option. This is the option I'm talking about, anchor text box. So under here you have these three different options. One says anchor start, one says anchor middle, one says anchor end. So what does this do and why is it crucial that you understand this? So we'll make sure you have that basic understanding first so you can see why this is useful, and then I'm going to show you that extra step that's going to make it really useful. Okay, so I'm going to select this heading and let's go over how this anchor text box works. Now looking at here, we can see this blue bounding box, but what I'm going to do to make this even more obvious is I'm going to drag out some guides on screen just to represent the top, middle, and bottom of this blue bounding box. So I'm just going to drag them down from my rulers. Now if you don't see rulers like this on the screen, you can hit Shift plus R, use that keyboard shortcut, that's Shift plus R, just to show and hide your rulers. Handy trick. Another handy trick, whenever you have those ruler showing, you can just go over top of the ruler and drag out a guide. So I'm going to drag out one that snaps to the bottom, one that snaps to the center, and one that snaps to the top of this bounding box here that's around our text. Now, anytime you add a text element, by default, when it first comes in, if you look under the spacing menu here, you're going to notice that the default setting is anchor start. And if you look at this little icon here, it's a clue to how this anchor text box feature works. You see a line up top, and then you see an arrow pointing downwards. And what that means is this anchor start is going to anchor the top of the text box. And so then when we add new text here, it's going to expand the text box, that blue bounding box, downwards. In other words, anytime you make your text bigger or you add more text, that bounding box is going to have to expand to make room for that in your design. And this anchor text box option is going to control how that happens. So again, it's anchored at the top. So now we can see that that top has not moved. If I come in here and add line 2, it's adding that below. Okay, so let me go ahead and get rid of that line 2 though. So let's go ahead and delete that. And let's suppose instead we came in here and we changed this to anchor end. And now we can see the line at the bottom is set up as the anchor point and it's going to expand upwards. So you can probably guess what's going to happen here, but if we're not sure, let's go in and test. So now I hit enter line 2, and now we see that the bottom of the text box didn't move. It expanded upward to make way to make space for that new line of text. And as you may have guessed, if we go in here and we anchor the middle of the text box, now when you add line, it's going to add spacing on the both the top and the bottom, and keep the center. You'll notice that this guideline here is still right across the center. That has not changed. So this anchor text box feature controls where the text box, that blue bounding box, is anchored as you expand when you add new text. And it may not seem like a big deal, but this is going to be crucial as you start creating your layouts, especially ones that you're going to reuse and you're going to want to make edits later. So let me just go ahead and we'll go up here. And again, if you want to ever clear a bunch of guides and you have it, you can just go under File here. You can go under Settings and you can go Clear Guides, and boom, get rid of your guides. You can also just click on one, drag it off the screen. So if I had one here, I could hover over top, drag it off the screen. Okay, so let me move this text here. So a lot of times when you're setting up a design layout, that spacing that you have between a heading and a body text or whatever element is going to be crucial. So obviously for this body text here, this paragraph text, I want to maintain the spacing between the heading and this item down here. So obviously it makes sense for me to have this text box anchored here at the top so that when I add more text, it's going to expand down the page. That just makes logical sense. It allows me to keep this spacing up here. Now, on the other hand, if I wanted to have this at the bottom of the page here, and then potentially I was going to be adding more text, so let me just delete some of this text here. Let me drag this to the bottom of the page. Let's just say this was a template here, and I had this text at the bottom. Maybe the header's still up the page here, up at the top of the page, and then I wanted to potentially add more text, and I wanted to flow up the page. Then I would need to come in here, and I would want to make sure that I change this setting. Again, come in here, change it so it expands upward. Now you can type, you can add more text, and as you do that, it's going to build up the page, okay? So this may not seem like a big deal, but I promise you, if you start to create reusable templates, and even as you're just designing something, these little things of having to make corrections. In other words, if I had this heading down here and I create a second line, and so then it's over top of this line, that's not quite what I wanted, so now I have to nudge this up to fix that spacing. These little things are going to start to cost you time that stacks up. Now, we are going to take this farther because there is a trick that's going to allow us to take this anchor text box, pair it with another option you have here in Canva, and paired together, it's going to be even more useful. Okay, so what's this additional trick? Well, let's say that this is one line for now. So here's our heading, and I'm going to put that up here, and then maybe we drag out a guide, and that's going to be where our heading sits. And I want this much spacing in between, and we could drag out, a guide on this side too if we wanted to. Things will line up pretty well though, so we'll bring that up like that, even that up if we want to. And then a little bonus tip, if you want to hide those guides, use the same keyboard shortcut that you use to show and hide your rollers, so that's Shift plus R. So with Shift plus R, we can use that to show our rollers, show our guides, hide our rollers, hide our guides. Okay, so we have this set up now, and here's the deal. What if you're building out a document like this? You're going to use this as a template in the future to spawn different pages, but maybe sometimes the heading's going to be more than one line. Maybe the heading's going to go to line 2. I want to keep the spacing between the heading and between my body text here, my paragraph text, even if I go to a second line. So what happens now, let's just check what our anchor is here. Let's make sure it's anchored because we want it to be here. We want it to be anchored at the top. We want it to expand down the page. But what happens now is if we do that line 2, then suddenly it's going to be over top of our text. And we don't want that. So what's the fix for that? Well, here's the trick. We're going to select that and then shift click to select this body text as well. Now we're just going to group these together. So you can do Control G, Command G on your keyboard. That's Control G on Windows, Command G on Mac. Or you look for this group option that's going to show up somewhere in this little pop-up when you have things selected. And then boom, we can group those together. Now what happens when we come in here and we add a second line? Well, look at that. Because they are grouped together, it's going to honor the anchor text box rule for this heading as we expand to another line, but it's also going to honor the spacing between this text element and this element here because of the fact that we have those grouped together. So I could come in here now to my heading and maybe I want to just adjust the line spacing a little bit to bring that down, but you'll notice that it's adjusting everything down here as well because we have those grouped together. So grouping things like this and combining that with what we know now about this anchor text box, this can be a really powerful feature when you start to build out pages and you're trying to maintain spacing between elements. You're trying to allow for certain things to expand down or expand up, but in certain situations you have space between items and you want to keep that spacing. Let's look at this example on this page here. So we have a heading here. We have this option here, and then maybe we have a picture over here. Well, again, I could group all of these together. So let me just select that, select this, select here. I'm going to group them all together. So again, once we have them all selected here, we'll group them together. Clicking specifically on this text box and seeing that yes, it does expand down the page. So now if I come in here and I add something else to my heading, something else, I maintain this layout below. So I maintain a really clean design with the spacing that I want between the heading and here, with the spacing I want between here and here, because everything is grouped together. Okay, pretty cool. But guess what? It gets even cooler, because let me show you something else. Let's look at another example real quick. So we have the heading on this page. You probably realize now you can grab this heading, you can drag it down until you see these smart guides. You can make sure it snaps directly to the center of the page. So we have it exactly centered now. And now with what we know about how that anchor box works, I could come in here and I could anchor this from the center. So now if I start to add a line, another line to my thing here, I could add line 2, I could add line 3, and I'm keeping it all centered with equal spacing at the top and the bottom, right? So that's pretty cool. Well, let me show you what else you can do. So let's say we want this to be outlined with a rectangle. Well, I can use the R keyboard shortcut to add this red rectangle. Maybe I always want to have this behind my heading. I'm just going to expand it in something like that. And now what I'm going to do is, again, select both of these elements, group them together. And now because I've grouped that background shape with this heading, now if I come in here and type more text, so let me click in my heading to make sure I'm typing in my heading. So double click to get in there. I can start to type, and look at that. It's going to expand with the heading. Now it looks like I don't have my anchor setting the way I want. This is what I want here. I accidentally set that wrong. So let me set that back. Again, make sure I have it totally centered in the page here. Totally centered, and now as I add text, it's going to expand up and down on the page, again, staying equal. And so now we have the thing where we can also have something contained within an element, like a shape, and have that shape automatically expand as the text expands. Now, the final piece of this puzzle is when we start to talk about templating, and we start to talk about maybe working in bulk. There's the bulk app, the bulk create app inside of Canva. The bulk create app inside of Canva. And if you're not familiar with bulk create, I can link to a tutorial above and down in the comments. But we're going to sort of work through an example now that's going to serve as a mini tutorial for this as well. And what I want you to see is this point of how important it's going to be that we take these new things we've learned, in other words, the anchor text box and how that comes into play, and then how you can group it to make it even work in a more smart way, and how important that's going to be when we start to sort of automate some of our work, when we start to use one file as sort of that template for a whole bunch of other designs. This is going to be really important, and it potentially can save us a ton of time, and I think these examples we look at are going to drive that home. So let's take a look at this design here. Let's imagine a scenario where you're designing some content for Instagram. So these are potentially 2 Instagram designs we could use, but for each of these, if we're going to use this particular design as the jump-off point for a whole bunch of designs, and we're potentially going to automate it with something like the bulk create tool, it's going to be really crucial that we think about how we want to anchor our text, how we want to potentially group things together so that it's going to work in a smart way. We're going to build out a smart template, because if we do this, we're potentially going to save a lot of time. And I think this example is really going to drive home that point to you. Now, if I look at this design and I go over to my design tab here, you can see that I actually just found this starting template. I brought it in here, and then I've made a few adjustments. So you can use Canva templates as great starting points, but usually you are going to have to make your own modifications, so it's something that works for you. And then you also have to keep in mind that those templates might not be set up in a smart way when it comes to anchor text box and then grouping elements together so that when you start to build out your design, things will sort of space automatically in a smart way. Looking at this one, for example, here, we can see that we have this quote here, and then we have this name here, but they are not grouped together. So even if this expands down the page as we want it to, by that default anchor text box positioning, if suddenly this goes to another line, then this is going to be over top of this here. So it would make sense to group these two elements together. So we can just double check here that the anchor text box is indeed at the top where we want it, and then of course we would shift click this next element and we would group them together. Now we know as we add lines here to our quote, then it's going to build out in a smart way. Okay, so this is what you have to start to think about once you have that initial design. Looking at this second page here in this design, obviously this is one here where if we look at this text element here and we come in here, we don't want the anchor text box to be here. We want it to expand from the center outward. So we're going to choose this second one here. And then of course we want it to group together with all of these elements here. We don't want this one frame that's just going to hold an image to be part of the group, but we're going to shift click that so it's unselected, keep the other ones here selected, and then we'll group these together. So now when we come in here and we expand this quote here, let me just come in here and just click in here if I can get it to click in here, and then add more lines. Now we see everything expands together in a smart way as we intended. So these are the things you have to think about, and these are the choices you need to make when you're setting up this initial design. Now, when we step over now and we look at the bulk create tool, we're going to see just how much time this ends up saving you. Okay, so let's look at this design and the bulk create tool. So in this version here, I don't have anything grouped together. So for this first example, we don't have anything grouped together. But then to get to the bulk create tool, I would come under the apps tab here. You can search for bulk create. Here it is right there. And if you've used this before, the way it works is you bring in data either by typing it manually, or what saves a lot of time is if you already have it in the right format, a CSV, a comma separated file. So something that is formatted like this on screen. Now, if this looks like a lot of work, this is the type of things that with AI tools, even Canva AI tools, but also tools like Chat GPT, you can get it to automatically create something like this. So you really can create, a lot of content in a short amount of time, either by giving it a transcript of your own content, either something you've built up, putting a spreadsheet together yourself, or just telling it what you want and getting it to generate it for you. So I'll have more and more content like that on this channel, because now that we're in the age of AI, you got to start to use this as a business tool just to sort of improve your efficiency. Okay, so you can create something like this, and then that is what we're going to import up in here into this bulk create tool. So I'm going to upload this data, and I have this quotes file here, and all this is, it has a quote in one column, and then it has the name of the person that said that quote in another file. So let's imagine we are creating all these Instagram posts that are going to be motivational quotes. So we're going to want that content, and it could be anything. You could set up, tips based on your own content, or something that makes sense. But for this example, we have motivational quotes. So then once you have that here, it'll sort of recognize the fields you have in your file, in your spreadsheet, and then you have to make sure they're connected here. Now you can see these are connected here, but let me just come in here. What you would do is you would click on a particular text field, and then you would come in here and you would make sure you choose this connect data, and then you're telling it, I want this connected to the quote field, I want this one, and I'm going to come in here and choose this connect data, and I want it connected to the person field, okay? So you're telling it what field you want it connected to within your data, and that's really all it is. You have a comma separated file, you bring it in, and then you start to assign sort of those fields to text placeholders you have in your design. And since I have sort of 20 different quotes here, I'm going to take this design and it's going to then spawn 20 new designs based on this. So once I have the data connected, I can hit continue here. It's going to show me all the quotes. I can come in here and select certain ones if I only want to do certain ones, but I'm going to go ahead and generate all these. Now remember, at this point in time, I do not have these grouped together. So if I generate these designs right now, we're going to go ahead and let them build out. This one looks great. But then if I start to look at some of the ones that have longer quotes, suddenly I see, okay, I would have to come in here and I would have to realign that. I would have to come in here and move this down. I would have to move this down. So all these little seconds you're losing by not setting up your initial template in a smart way, that is going to cost you. And those seconds are going to add up to minutes, and those minutes are going to add up to hours. over the years as you do this work. So you really want to work in a smart way. So if we just came back here to this original design, so let me just backtrack here, and we had just grouped these together. So if we just did this one step that we know of now, we group these together, and then we come in here and we run this bulk create tool again. This time we're going to upload the data, same file, exact same thing. The only change we've made is we've grouped them together in a smart way. Now if I go ahead and continue, these should be connected still. Yes, go ahead and continue. Generate designs. It's doing the same thing again, but now we see, okay, first one looked good, it did before, but then, oh, the spacing is maintained in the second one and the third one. So all of these look good now because we did that simple step of making sure we group them together since we've learned that trick. So this is what I mean. This potentially can save you a lot of time so you don't have to go in and fiddle with your design and make, if you're spawning 100 designs at once, 20 designs at once, you don't want to have to make corrections in each design if it's something you can prevent just by using this smart workflow, this new trick that you have learned. So let's look at the second one here, because as your design gets more complicated, then potentially the savings in time that you're going to lose if you don't set it up in a smart way, it's going to be even bigger. So for this one here, what would we want to do? Well, we know we're going to drag in images later. Now you can use the bulk create tool and assign one of the fields to an image, but then you sort of have to go through and tell your spreadsheet or your data where each image is. So usually you're going to have to just drag and drop, and it doesn't take that much time. So I don't always assign the image field as part of the bulk create tool, although there are ways you can do it. But what I am going to do is come in here and make sure I assign this to the quote, and I assign this to the name, and I also want to make sure this is set up in a smart way. So initially this was not grouped together, but what I've done is I've grouped this all together, this central part, and then the quote itself here, this central one here, if I look here, yes, I have it anchored in the middle, so it's going to expand outward. And because I have it grouped with this background shape, the background rectangle should expand outward as well. So now if I go in here, since I've spent the time to set this up the way I want, now if I come in here to the bulk create tool, again, I'll upload those quotes. So we'll grab that quotes file, we're going to open it. Again, you can double check that this is the quote, double check that this is the person. We're going to go ahead and hit continue. Do we want to generate all these 20 designs? Yes. Boom. Very quickly, it's going to generate all these designs, and we see that yes, it's maintaining the spacing. Yes, this background shape is expanding as appropriate. And so all I would have to do then is come in here and say, okay, let's add some nature photography or something to these. And so maybe I'll make this a little smaller here. I'm going to go on other photos. I'm just going to start to drag in a different photo so that I sort of have a theme here, but so that each of these is unique and different. And very quickly I can come in here and I'm creating a lot of content very, very quickly. Okay, so again, using this new trick, understanding how that anchor text box works, understanding how you can then group things together in concert with that anchor text box so that your document builds out in a smart way, maintains spacing when appropriate, has background elements that it can expand along with your text as your text expands, and then combining it with a tool like bulk create, where you're building off of one file and having it generate a number of designs. That's when you really want to make sure you understand this and you set it up in a smart way. Otherwise, I would find myself having to come in here and maybe this wasn't grouped, and so this is up here and I got to move this down. And you're spending all these time doing these little tweaks when you don't have to do it if you understand how it works and you just build out the first design in a smart way. Okay, so I hope you've liked this. I hope you've learned something. I hope you understand how much potential time you can save just by understanding how things work, understanding these simple tricks inside of Canva. Hey, this is Greg. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found it useful. Feel free to like below, share it with anybody else that might benefit from it. And then I'll also put a newsletter link and a resources link down below where you can subscribe to my newsletter. I have lots of free content I give away to subscribers, stuff that you see around me now, content like that, content like this video. So if you're interested in any of that, just check out the links below. Thanks again for watching. I hope to see you soon.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.